All right, I'm going to review Rambo, the first Rambo, First Blood, which, in my opinion, I haven't seen the Rambo from 2008 or the one from, I think it came out in like 2019, but I've got them both on my hard drive. I'll watch them soon. But I just have the first Rambo is on a whole different level than the other ones. The other ones are just kind of 80s action movies, but the first one is actually based on a novel from the 70s, which I've read the book too, and I love the book. I've got to say, I like the book a little better than the movie, but I love the movie. I've been watching that movie over and over my entire life. And the reason is I can relate to Rambo. That's like one movie character where I really feel like a connection to him because he's like, and you find out a lot more about him in the book than in the movie because if they made the whole book into a movie, the movie would be like 5 hours long. You know what I mean? But I'd still watch it. But so in the movie, you learn that you know, and this is why I relate to him. He's like a homeless drifter who doesn't fit into society, who minds his own business. He did his thing in Vietnam. He was a Green Beret, and you know he was a valuable asset to the U.S. Army in Vietnam. And now he comes back to America, and he can't get no job. Everyone looks at him like he's a lunatic. He's been through a lot of shit. He was a POW, and he escaped. And they go through that whole scene in the book when he escapes the POW camp, which is awesome. Um, and he walks like miles and miles in in like the Southeast Asian jungle with like no supplies and like what he goes through in Vietnam. You learn a lot more about it in the book. Um, at the end of this video, I'll show y'all some screenshots from the movie, but I'll also the book ends differently than the movie. So at the end of the review, I'll tell you how the book ends. So if you're gonna read the book, I'll warn you before there's any spoilers. So um, in the book, you find out that he's just hitchhiking across the country. He doesn't really know what to do with himself. He can't get a job nowhere, so he goes to visit one of his team members, the only one who's left alive. I think he's in Washington State. And when he gets there, he finds out the guy got cancer from the Agent Orange that they were spraying in Vietnam. Um, and so he's upset, and he's already upset about the whole thing. When he came back from Vietnam, there was people spitting on him, calling him a baby killer, and you know he has a lot of bitterness in him towards the American public because he felt like he just went through hell because his country told him to, and now he comes back here and nobody will even give him a job, and on top of that, everyone treats him like he's a piece of shit. You know what I mean? So you find out in the book that in this town, when he's walking through, the cop comes through and he's basically telling him to leave the town. And Rambo's thinking at the time, this has happened too many times and I'm not putting up with this shit anymore. He's like, all I want is to get something to eat, and these people keep chasing me out of their towns. He spends most of his time in between towns just sleeping in the woods, but he has to go through every once in a while to get food and supplies and stuff. And every time he does, the people are all like hostile towards him, and the cops always make him leave. And now in this town where the movie starts, they won't even let him stop and get a cheeseburger. Well, the cop's like, all you want is to eat. He's like, all I want to do is eat. The cop takes him, and he gets him a couple of cheeseburgers, and then he takes him to the edge of the town and he drops him off. And Rambo's sitting there thinking about it, and he's like, man, fuck this shit. They're not just gonna keep running me out of every town. I'm going back in. And he goes to go back into the town, and the cop sees him, and the cop arrests him. And the whole time, in the book, you can know what Rambo's thinking, and he's thinking to himself like, this guy has no idea. I can kill him right now. But what Rambo doesn't know is the cop, and they don't say this in the movie either, the cop is a Korean War veteran. So like in a way, you know, in a weird way, the cop likes Rambo, but I mean, you find that out later on. Like the reason they go so hard at each other, Rambo and this cop, is because really they're very similar. You know what I mean? But that part's awesome when the cop is searching him and he finds his hunting knife and he's like, "What are you doing with a knife like this?" And Rambo's like, "Hunting." He goes, "What do you hunt with a knife?" Rambo goes, "Anything." And so then, the cop arrests Rambo, takes him to the police station, and Rambo is trying not to snap this whole time. And you find that out in the book. Like he's trying not to snap on these people. He doesn't want no trouble. But the cops are kind of abusing him, treating him like shit. And then when they go to shave him, the guy pulls out a straight razor while another guy is holding him from behind, and he has flashbacks to Vietnam because when he was in the POW camp, they were like slicing him with knives and shit to try to like torture him. So when he's in the police station and they're holding him and the guy pulls out the razor, he snaps. And he at this point, he's not even in control of himself and he just starts fighting for his life. And people may see the movie and think like, "Oh, that's bullshit. Nobody could fight their way out of a police station." Like, let me tell you something, man. Emotion can turn you into a superhuman being. And I'll give you an example. My buddy Ben, who lived on the street in New York, he came from a group home. And these group homes in upstate New York are very abusive towards the kids, sexually abusive, abusive in every way you can imagine. These people, a lot of these people who get these jobs in these group homes, they get these jobs because they want to abuse kids. And so I'm judging this off. I knew a lot of people on the street in New York who came from these group homes, and they have been abused their whole lives in every way you can imagine, and they didn't do nothing. Their parents just put them in a group home, or their parents died, or whatever. It's their lives have been very unfair. So my buddy Ben, this is one of the toughest kids I ever met. I never heard of him losing a fight. He's not a big dude. He's about my size, a little heavier, but not much. But the kid fights like a lion, and he's a state champion wrestler, and he's a hard kid. He's tough. So he was telling me a story one time at the group home where he just had enough and he started fighting back on one of the people. So they called the cops on him. And now the cops, the cops don't know all the abuse and all that. So they take the group home people's side. And Ben was saying, like, just the unfairness of it was enough to, he said it ended up taking like a ton of people to restrain Ben, and they ended up like strapping him down to a bed in some asylum somewhere and pumping him full of all these drugs. He said he was so angry that none of the drugs were even having any effect. Nothing was calming him down. And it's like this this is how powerful emotion is. And it took like five grown men to get this kid who's my size restrained. And Ben wouldn't just be telling me some story. I mean, this was a story he didn't even want to tell. I don't even know how we got on the subject. But I remember thinking to myself, like, emotion is such a powerful thing. Ben was so filled with rage at that point that, he would have ran through a police station and they wouldn't have been able to stop him. So if you think it's bullshit, you don't know. And I can tell you one thing, I'm an emotional person, and when my emotions are going, I've you know I've brought people down who were, when I snap to the point where ain't nothing gonna stop me. Let me tell you something, nothing is gonna stop me. You know what I mean? I know how Ben felt. It's like you just you don't even have time to be afraid. You're reacting off of pure just animal emotion. You know what I mean? Like there's been times where someone got me really upset, and I took him down to the ground as if he was made of paper. I flew at him and jumped up in the air. And it was like, I remember seeing his face as I was coming down on him. It was like I was a leopard and he was a deer. He had no chance. You know what I mean? Now, this wasn't like a super big guy or anything, but under normal circumstances, me and him would have probably been an even fight, but my emotions were so powerful at this time that I went right through him. So I can tell you one thing: someone could do what Rambo did. So he ends up whooping all these cops' asses in the police station and escaping. And in the movie, they make Rambo a lot more human. In the movie, he's just trying to escape, but in the book, he is so pissed off and enraged at this point that he wants them to chase him. He doesn't want to escape. He wants to lead them into the woods because he wants to kill every single one of them, especially that cop who started the whole thing, the Korean War veteran. Rambo's got a hatred for that guy that is like, in the book, you're you can hear like what Rambo's thinking, and he's like, he doesn't care about anything. He doesn't even care about living at this point. He wants to kill that cop and anyone else who comes after him. So he leads them into the woods. Now, in the movie, they do this scene pretty good. So he, they they're in the woods trying to find him, but Rambo is like, they think they're hunting him, but he's hunting them. And this scene they do pretty good in the movie. So basically, what Rambo does is, now he's an ex-Green Beret expert in guerrilla warfare, and his job in Vietnam was to kill. His job was to kill as many people as possible. That was it. They even say it in the movie. I'm not sure if they say it in the book, but that was his job, to just kill as much of the enemy as possible. So he's a pro at it. So when he gets them into the woods, he's got a little head start on him. So he sets some traps with like the punji sticks and all that, which is like Vietnamese tactics. They sharpen sticks and they set up these little traps that another thing they used to do in Vietnam, they would take those sharpened sticks and cover them in human shit because it's like poison to a wound. It infects it. So Rambo don't do that in the movies though, but he does set some traps with the punji sticks, and the way he maneuvers them around in the woods is he's setting them up to get into crossfires with each other. Number one, number two, he's setting the traps in places where when the guy goes down, now that guy is bait for the next guy who's going to come and try to help him. Rambo's going to take that dude out, and it's like, the way he plays them all like a game of chess and maneuvers them around, it's brilliant. You know what I mean? And so he ends up taking them out one by one, using them as bait to catch other ones. Now, the difference between the book and the movie is, in the book, he's killing them. He's not just wounding them. In the movie, he's wounding them. But in the book, he's killing them. And the first thing he does in the book is he takes out the dogs and the guy with the dogs. Like, that's his first priority when they're trying to hunt him down, is to take out the guy with the dogs and the dogs. And another part in the book where this is the only complaint I have about the book is when he's searching the guy who had the dogs, who he whacked, and he finds like a bunch of Slim Jims, he just starts stuffing them all in his mouth right then and there. Now, let me tell you something. In a survival situation, you don't want to eat like that. You want to take the food and hang on to it until you get the opportunity to relax and eat it. When you're in a high stress state of mind and the food's not going to be as nourishing and it's not going to do you no good, you're going to end up just shitting it out later on. Your body's not going to do nothing with it. What you should do is wait until later on when you're relaxed and you can, you know what I'm saying? Your state of mind is important. That's why, and I used to watch Man vs. Wild with Bear Grylls, and he's like, oh, eat some grubs. It's like, nah, dude, that 9 times out of 10, that's not going to nourish you. It's going to make you sick because of your state of mind while you're eating it. So don't believe all that where they're telling you in the survival shows, oh yeah, you can just eat bugs. I mean, it depends on the person, some people, but if you're just sitting there stuffing grubs into your mouth, and you know what I mean, it's not going to be very nourishing. You need to find food that is not going to make you sick. So, but even if it's good food, if you're eating it in a high stress situation, it's not going to be as nourishing, and it's probably, your body's not even going to process it properly. So if you get your hands on some food in a high stress situation, wait to eat it until your stress levels are lower. Anyways, that's really my only complaint about the book. But so after he takes everyone else out, that one cop. Um, Now in the book, that cop manages to escape. In the movie, Rambo catches him, and he puts his knife to his throat, and it's like one of the best lines ever. He's like, "I could have killed them all, and I could have killed you. In town, you're the law. Out here, it's me." He's like, "Don't push it. I'll give you a war that you won't believe." And then he just leaves the dude standing there pissing his pants. Um, but in the book, I forget. It's been years since I read it, but somehow that cop managed to escape. Now Rambo went. He goes way out of his way to hunt this cop down, and he ends up wounding the cop in a lot of ways. The cop barely gets out alive. And the way he escapes is he goes into this big, huge growth of like thorns. And Rambo's thinking like, all right, instead of going in after him, I'm going to cut him off at the exit. And what ends up happening is the cop just passes out in the middle of it, and Rambo like loses track of him, and that's But in the movie, he let the cop live. Now, um, at this point in the movie, I don't want to give away too much for anyone who hasn't seen it. If you haven't seen this movie, I suggest you see it. It's one of the best movies ever. Um, and so at this point in the movie, Rambo just goes off and hides in this like an old mine. And in the book, this is what happens too. But he had gotten his hands on a radio and a rifle, and he's got some supplies now. He's got some weapons, and he also ends up hunting a wild boar, which so he's got some meat. In the book, he kills a bird, but so he's hiding in the cave, and all of a sudden, and he's just listening to the radio chatter. He's not talking to them on the radio. He's just listening through the radio as he eats his food at the fire. Then all of a sudden, his team leader from Vietnam comes on the radio. And he's like, "Cubby leader to Raven." And he's like, "Talk to me, Johnny." And like Rambo's like, "What the?" He's like, "Am I fucking having flashbacks or something?" But the guy starts identifying all Rambo's team members and saying some other stuff that nobody else would know. And so Rambo's like, "What the?" He's like, "This is my team leader from Vietnam." And he gets on the radio, and and this is one of the best lines in the movie too. Colonel Troutman is like, "Well, look, John, but we can't have you running around out there wasting friendly civilians." And Rambo's like, "There are no friendly civilians." And then Troutman's like, "I'm your friend, Johnny." He's like, "I was out there with you, knee deep in all the blood and guts." And Rambo's like, "They drew first blood, not me." And so, Rambo basically feels like they started a war with me, and now I'm going to finish it. And he's so enraged and so pissed off at American society, he can't even get a job. He can't even, you know, in the end of the movie, he goes on this emotional speech, which is great, where he's like, "In Vietnam, I was in charge of $1 million equipment. Out here, I can't even get a job parking cars." He's like, and like, I just know exactly how he feels. You know what I mean? I know exactly how Rambo feels. Not that, plenty of people gave me jobs and hired me, but something would go wrong every time. And when something's my fault, I'll admit it. But 9 times out of 10, it wasn't my fault. The economy collapsed, and then, you know, they shut down the whole city over some virus and shit. Every time I get going in life and I start getting some money, some stupid thing happens. It's very frustrating. But I've never gotten to the point where I'm ready to like start hunting people down, and you know what I mean? But I can tell you one thing. If I was in Rambo's position, I would have felt the same way he did. I'll tell you that much. That's, I love the movie and I love the book even more. The book is from the 70s. But so now this is one of the best parts of the book, which they don't even go through in the movie. When he's in the mine and he breaks radio silence and talks to the colonel, he knows that they're going to be able to triangulate his position now. So he sets up for a little firefight. What he didn't realize is that they were going to bring a bazooka. So they shoot the cave and they shoot the mine entrance and it collapses. So he's stuck in the mine. Now you find out in the book that he's not a huge fan of confined spaces. So he's like, man, I'm going to die in this mine after all the shit I did and everything I've been through. I'm just going to get buried alive. He's like, I'm not having it. So he goes trying to find a way out of the cave. And now this is one of the best parts of the book, and it's a very deep part, which they don't even show in the movie. But what happens is he finds this little hole. Now he's traveling through this cave for hours and hours, and finally he gets to like a dead end, but there's this little hole, and he sticks his hand in there, and it's all mushy, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And he's like, "What is this shit?" But he can tell like there's kind of an opening behind it, but it's all mushy and shit. So he's like, but he also feels like bugs crawling up his arm when he sticks his hand in there, and he's disgusted by it. He's like, "Man, what the fuck, dude?" And so he knows he's got to either go through this hole with this mushy, disgusting bug pile of shit in it. He's got to try to go through it, or he's just buried alive. So he goes to go through it. And he gets like a little in, and he's still in this, he's under this mush, and he doesn't know what the fuck it is. And he pulls himself out, and like, then he goes to sleep. He can't even force himself to do it. The next day he wakes up, and he's like, this is what I got to do, man. And look, we all end up in positions like this in life where there's something in front of you that is bigger than anything you've ever faced in your life, but you know that where you're trying to be is on the other side of this. You know what I'm saying? That's how I felt with facing homelessness. I was like, I can keep going back this way and hiding in my little comfort cave and go nowhere, or I can face this thing that I am scared shitless of and just deal with it and try to get to the other side of it, because I know deep down in my heart where I'm trying to be is on the other side of this thing. And so that's why I love this part of the book too, because he's got this obstacle in his face where it's like he's either got to go through it or he's dead. So he pushes his way through it, and he ends up like swimming his way up through this crap, but it's like up to his waist. And he's like afraid of bats too, and there's a billion bats in this thing. Oh, so this is what happened. He went through and he came up through the pile of shit, and a million bats started like fluttering around him. So he went back in the hole, and he was like hyperventilating, trying to catch his breath. He's scared of bats. So he's like, God damn it. And what he realizes, that pile is bat shit that he was just crawling through. So he's like, oh man. So, but he realizes it's the only way out. So he goes back in. And he's in a waist high bat shit with cockroaches crawling on him and bats flying all around his face and shit. And so what he ends up doing is, instead of panicking and running out, he just stays calm. And the bats eventually lead him out. So by staying calm and facing his fear, instead of just freaking out because the bats were fluttering around, he realized that once he disturbed them, they all headed to the exit. So now he just goes in the direction the bats went, and yeah, he's pulling the roaches off him and shit. He's disgusted, but he knows that the bats are getting in and out somehow. So he keeps following, and as he's going, this pile of bat shit up to his waist is getting lower and lower. And finally, he gets to a point where he's out of the bat shit, and he can also feel a draft. So there's fresh air coming through. So he goes, and he sees the moonlight coming through the hole, and he gets out of the cave. And at this point, the whole manhunt they had after him, they had the National Guard out there and everything. As far as they know, he's dead. They think Rambo's buried in that cave. And so at this point, he can escape and just go live his life, but he decides he wants revenge. He doesn't want to escape. He wants revenge. He wants war. And he's very angry with them. So he goes back to the town, and he hijacks a military truck, gets his hands on an M60 machine gun, very powerful machine gun. He gets to the town, and he blows up the gas station. He takes out all their lights and communication, treats it just like a war, strategically destroys everything. The ammo store, the gun store, he blows that up. And as he's doing all this, well, the last thing he does is he takes out their fuel supply, the gas. He takes out their power supply, takes out their communication. He's treating it like war. And then, and he knows where the cop station is. He goes to the gun store, throws all the bullets and all the gunpowder in the middle of the store, leaves a trail of gunpowder, and lights it up. And so there's a bunch of shots going off in the gun store. While this is happening, he's watching the police station, and he sees on the roof the cop that he wants to kill, who's popping up and like looking, and So now Rambo knows where his target is. Now this this is in the movie. The book ending is different. I'll tell you at the end. So, um, he ends up now he knows where the cop is. The cop is on the roof, and Rambo knows that. So Rambo shoots up the police station. And at this point, the cop on the roof, like he wanted war with Rambo, and Colonel Troutman was trying to talk him out of it and this and that. But the cop's like, no, I'm going to kill this kid, this and that. And Troutman's like, you know what? Whatever. And he leaves. So the cop, now when Rambo's destroyed half the town and now he's shooting up the police station, the cop is on the roof, like shitting himself. Like, what did I get myself into? This guy is on another level. And so what Rambo does is goes into the police station. He knows the cop is up there. He knows the cop is looking through the skylight, and Rambo runs across just to get the guy to start firing to give away his exact position. Once he does that, Rambo shoots through the ceiling, hits him up. He falls through the skylight, and Rambo's got him. And Rambo won. And the guy's like, just kill me. And Rambo's like, not saying a word. He's about to just take his head off. And then Troutman comes in and talks him out of it. And at this point, Troutman's like, John, it's over. Look, there's a bunch of cops and National Guard outside, and Rambo's setting up a barricade. He wants to take them all on, and Troutman's like, it's over, John. He's like, you want to go out like this? You're the last guy on the team left. Is this how you want to end it? He's like, it's over, man. And Rambo's like, nothing is over. Like, he's like, you can't just turn it off, man. He's like, they switched me on, and now I'm ready. I'm ready to go out to the bitter end. You know what I'm saying? And Rambo gives this like emotional speech where he's like, you know, I was in charge of $1 million equipment in Vietnam. Now I can't get a job parking fucking cars. He's like, civilian life is nothing to me. He's like this, it's nothing. Like, I want it to be over. I don't, I don't want to live the way I've been living. But, Troutman talks him down, and Rambo ends up getting arrested. And then, in the second Rambo, he's working at some forced labor camp, and they need him for a mission in Vietnam. That's how they get into the next Rambo movies. Now, here's the spoiler from the book. Skip about a minute ahead if you don't want to hear it. What happens at the end of the book is Rambo, once he gets it to the point where it's just him and the cop, and he's hit. They go to war, him and the cop, in the town in the book, and Rambo kind of wins. And when he gets to the point where he's about to kill the cop, Troutman kills Rambo. So that's the difference between the book and the movie. I'll put a text on the screen to tell you where to skip ahead to skip that part. So that's my review of Rambo First Blood, one of my favorite movies ever. I love it. There's a lot to learn from it. Like the main thing is, if you got some major fear in front of you, you can avoid it for the rest of your life. You can dance around it. You can pretend it's not there, but you do what Rambo did and just push your way through it and stay calm, and you'll see that nothing is as bad as fear makes it. You know what I mean? And look, my life has been a series of these things where I come up against something that I'm like, I can't do this. But it's like, what choice do I have? I can either do this or I can go hide. You know what I mean? I've got to do this. And so my life has been a series of one after another, one insurmountable obstacle after another. And I I could talk for an hour on just that subject. Maybe I'll make a YouTube video about it. Yeah, you know what? That's probably what my next YouTube video is going to be. Anyways, Rambo: First Blood, 5 stars in my opinion. One of the best movies I've ever seen. I love it. I love the character Rambo, and the book is even better. So my advice is, if you love the movie, read the book because it's even better. It's like, you know, it's just great, great book. So thanks for being here. I appreciate every single one of you, and we're going to keep this channel going. My next review, I'm not sure what it's going to be. Something different, though. This is like 2 war movies in a row. Although Rambo is a whole different level of war movie. But so I guess that's the end of this one. I appreciate every single one of you, and I'll show y'all some screenshots now. And I will see y'all in the next one. Everybody have a good one.